No.
Get up.
Get my lips together. All right. Go. I thought we played pretty good. I think there's a lot of things we can clean up on. Like Coach spoke about today, we had 13 turnovers, which is bad, but we had maybe 5 or 6 possessions that could have easily been turnovers, and that changes the game. So I think we can do better there. But overall, I thought we were pretty good on the defensive end. Maybe gave up some things that we want to take away, but that's going to happen, especially when you're playing against a team that has a guy like Joker who he draws so much attention. And with his playmaking ability, he's going to get some things going. I thought early on, he kind of got going a little bit. He had maybe 6 and 3 in the first 2-3 minutes of the game, and then we were able to kind of get him contained a bit. So overall, I thought we were pretty good. Now we just got to continue understand that tomorrow is going to be way tougher. They're going to come out. They're going to play way harder. They're going to make adjustments. We're going to make some adjustments our own as well. But I thought overall we played a pretty good game.
So much of your guys' history has to do with these, death lineup. Obviously, Hampton's 5. The one everyone's kind of talking about from yesterday is the 3 guards, you and Wiggins. What is the potential of that group?
I think the potential is great. Saying that, we played 5 minutes together. I don't want to jump the gun. And we get blitzed by 20 tomorrow with that lineup. You just never know. It's just so fresh and new. But the exciting part about it is you have playmakers, you have scorers, you have shooters, you have guys that can defend it, and it's a great mix. And so I think, that lineup definitely causes us issues. And for the most part, I think we can hold our own on the defensive end. And I think that's the most important piece when you're going into a small line. That lineup can be as incredible as it wants offensively. But if you can't get stops on the defensive end, it doesn't matter, And so I thought defensively is where that lineup has to, it's not our best defensive lineup, nor should it be. But it has to be able to produce enough stops to make the offensive end relevant. Last night we did that, and we have to continue to build up on that, but also understand how we're going to go about doing that. I think it was so fresh last night, you're kind of just playing. But as we continue to go on and get more and more reps together, it's crazy to believe we're sitting here talking about getting reps in together and we're already in the playoffs, but that's kind of the challenge that we've been faced with this year due to all the injuries and guys in and out of the lineup, and myself included. So I think the challenge is going to be what's going to be that group's identity on the defensive end. When you have groups that you put on the floor, you have to create an identity. What is it going to be for that group on that end of the floor will ultimately allow or determine how good or great that group can be. But I think that group has all the potential in the world to be a damn good one. I'm sorry, Michael and Tim, I said I wasn't cussing at my press conference. I'm so sorry. Jesus. That wasn't that bad, was it?
I didn't think so.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Michael. I let Mike down.
You mentioned what is the identity of that defensively. I assume it's mostly you have to handle the interior. Wiggins probably has to rebound well. What do you think the defensive identity?
I think that group has to speed people up. You can't just let a team walk down and, walk the ball into their spots and get into the sets that they want to get into. So, it has to be some pressure. It has to be trying to speed a group up and flying around. I definitely have to hold down the interior with such a small group. But, I feel pretty confident in that over the course of time. I think I can do that pretty well. And we definitely need Wiggins to rebound as he did last night. I think he finished the game with 8 or 9 rebounds. And it's disappointing because he got to go get the double-double. Who am I to talk? I always miss stuff like that. But 9 rebounds was incredible, especially against, a team who, they started off the game on the offensive boards. I think they had 3 in 1 possession in the first, second quarter. And we were able to hone that in. And a big part of it was Wiggs coming to clean up rebounds. Klay Thompson coming back in while Biggs are engaged with Joker and tipping the ball away so we can gain possession. That's huge. We all know Steph's a great rebounder. He always has been his entire career, and we need Jordan Poole to come up with a few. With his size and his length, I don't doubt that he's a good rebounder in this league, and I think that's one of his next challenges. And he steps up to the challenge. He don't back down from challenges. So we're going to need all 5 guys to come back and rebound because that's the key. If we can come back and rebound and push the pace, it's going to be hard for any team to keep up.
2 questions about Jordan Poole. First, what did you think about the first playoff game of his career, how he did?
I thought he was incredible. I thought he was poised. If you look at the beginning of the game, that's the jitters, first day of school. I'm not sure he took many shots at the beginning of the game, which, most guys come out, they get sped up and they're forcing bad shots or turning the ball over. I thought he was incredible. He handled himself well. Again, those are large shoes to fill. Being in the place of Steph Curry, he fills them better than anyone I've ever seen. And it's pretty amazing what he's been able to do and what he's doing. But I thought he handled himself well on both ends of the floor, and offensively. He's who the world has grown to. He was who the world has grown to know.
And then I was
missed a couple free throws, so we got to talk about that.
And then I was reviewing something you said after the Spurs game. It was inside a compliment for Jordan where you're saying he should be the most improved player. And you were talking about when he dropped down to the G League for those 11 games. You said he was almost out of the league. Were you embellishing there to tell a good story? Or do you really feel like that was a fork in the road for Jordan, that he could be on his way up or he could be on his way out?
It's definitely a fork in the road, as we all meet at some point in our life, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in our careers, whatever, just in life in general. I think that was his in his career, where you have a guy, you draft him into the first round. I know how that feels. I mean, I wasn't in a first-round draft pick, but early second. And if you work, you work. If you don't, nobody's beating Bob Myers' door down if Jordan Poole doesn't work out. Like, it's 27th pick. And for him, it's like, all right, this just isn't working out. Like, you're not figuring it out. You're not getting it. You send him down to the D League and see if he can figure it out, or the G League, I'm sorry, and see if he can figure it out there. And he actually goes and figures it out. And I think the biggest piece was of him going down to the G League. I remember I was checking in with Chris Weems every day, like, how's Jordan? How's Jordan? And Weems, like, he's been incredible. Like, his attitude has been incredible. The way he's leading as a young guy been incredible, and all the reports are great. You fast forward to him coming back, and he started to build right on top of that as if he was playing in NBA games. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. I thought that was a huge sign of his maturing, because, a year ago before then, kind of had the same situation. And he didn't handle all those as well. Did he play well? He's a great player, but how do you handle yourself? And I think that's been some of the biggest growth he's had. And then, like I've always said, he's a worker, so you never doubt a guy that works that hard is going to get better at basketball with the way that he works. I think what I appreciate most is he, since I've been introduced to him, and that's before I wanted to be introduced to him. I hated him before because he was going against my Spartans, but he's never shy. I've never seen him shy away from a moment. I've never seen him go into a big moment and shy away from it. No one's always successful in a big moment, but how you handle that moment, if you shy away from it or not, says a lot about you. And he has never shied away from a moment. So to see him have the success that he's having, it's not surprising. And again, if Jordan Poole isn't the MVP, the most improved player, then the NBA really needs to relook at their process, because you cannot find a guy on that list that has made a bigger improvement. I don't care. So if he's not the most improved player, then let's rename the award to who I'm going to say as media, I don't have a vote, but to who we like the most, to who we see is more electrifying, to who we see may have a bigger impact on their team. That's not the name of the award. That's actually the most valuable player. And so if we're talking the most improved player, and if the award was voted on based upon its name, then it's a no-brainer who's the most improved player. I just fear that these awards sometimes aren't voted on in junction with the name. And that's the issue. That's probably why Jordan lost most improved player, because you get these ballots and you're like, oh, man, Darius Garland's an all-star. I am probably one of the biggest Darius Garland fans you'll meet. Like, I'm a huge DG fan. Ja Morant's doing this. Like, I'm a big Ja Morant fan. I like to see Ja Morant play. I love how he leads the squad. Incredible. Not the most improved player. Ja Morant was incredible last year. Miles Bridges, who we all know I'm a big fan of. That's just natural. He's from Flint, from Michigan State. Like, I'm always cheering for Miles. But I can't say Miles got much better than Jordan Poole. His improvement was as big as Jordan Poole. Miles Bridges' improvement was huge. He'll probably get a max contract and will be well deserving of it. But if you're going to talk about contracts, I mean, Jordan Poole's kind of playing himself into that as well, right? He went from being a 27 pick and not playing and was in the G League a year ago to date, or almost. So again, if we're going off the name of the award, it's Jordan Poole. If it's not Jordan Poole, then I'm starting a petition on change.org to rename these awards, because it's just not accurate.
Draymond. Good material for the podcast too, right?
I got more.
Yeah.
I got more for the pod. Tune in. It's been a good one this week. It's no guests, though. It's just me. I can't coordinate with guests during playoffs. It's a different type of focus. So it's just me. But I got a few gums to bump. So tune in.
Can you take us through what your ramp up's been like, just in terms of both preparation and your emotions leading to the playoffs, knowing the stage it is and, first time since 19 that you're back?
My emotions all week has been a wreck. Going from, I feel like two of my best games since returning in New Orleans and San Antonio, and just really starting to turn that corner and feel like myself again. And then having to wait 5 or 6 days to play a game and knowing what's ahead, my emotions has been a wreck all week. I've tried to contain those by being very quiet, not saying much, because I don't want to say the wrong thing, because I knew my emotions was a wreck. That's growth. However, going into yesterday, I felt the most peace and calm I felt in a very, very, very long time going into the start of this series. I just felt very at peace. Like, oh, man, we're here again. Like, and this feels normal, and this feels great, and this feels more like what I'm accustomed to. I felt very at peace going into yesterday. And so I thought that was a big jump for me from where my emotions were all week, and just antsy and wanting to play and on edge about every little thing. I think I honed it in well for the game. My ramp up has been great. I think early starting off, I was playing like trash, which, like I said before, in my mind, that's not supposed to happen. I know the work that I put in to get back on the floor, and that's just not supposed to happen. In everybody else's mind, you're out for 11 weeks, it probably does happen. But I thought the game plan with Rick and the team and Steve and Jem and the coaching staff to ease me back in and, then decide not to start and come off the bench and try to get some consistent minutes. I thought the ramp up was great. I thought they brought me along slowly well, but I thought they ramped me up fast enough as well. And so I thought ramped me up fast enough once it was time. I thought they did a great job of that as well. And, I think the ramp up has been great. When I came back, what was it, March 14th or something like that, I said, all right, that gives me a month of playoffs. So 2 weeks, I'll probably won't be much of myself, but that'll give me 2 weeks to kind of round in the form. And it kind of happened. It's gone the way I hoped it would go, and now I got to continue to build. But I like this time of year. This is when basketball is fun. So
you mentioned you coming off the bench when you first came back. Steph obviously came off the bench, and he talked about how part of the decision making into that was you see Clay come back. He's sitting for up to 45 minutes-ish at a time when he was starting. Do you kind of like this coming off the bench as you ramp back up to not have those long spells of being cold? And does that work well, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think, we all get into this thing of egos in this league. But if you see a guy come back and play at Michigan State after missing a bunch of time, probably going to come off the bench. If you see a guy come back and he plays for Central Middle School, probably going to come off the bench if you miss that much time. But I think in the NBA, money and egos gets so it clouds judgment. And not speaking of Clay, just saying in general, if you're doing what's best for Clay, or anyone for that matter, coming back from 2 serious injuries in Clay's matter, in any other world, you come off the bench. But money and egos drive this league. And so, whereas Klay Thompson makes $37 million a year or whatever the number is, I don't know. Who's telling him you're coming off the bench? Who's going to tell him, hey, it's best for you to come off the bench? Who's doing that? Again, that's not to Klay Thompson. That's just who we're talking about. But that's to everyone. Who's going to tell, Jimmy Butler when he's coming back from a 3 weeks absence, 4 week absence, or, in some guys' cases even longer, that you like, what? Let's start you and just throw you out there. Nobody's going to tell them not. They're not putting them out there. So in turn, then you just kind of end up in these systems of like, all right, that guy's back. He's going into the starting lineup. But in that case where you're on a minute restriction and it's not better suited for you, then ultimately it ends up hurting you and it ends up hurting the team. And so I think what we all saw with Klay coming back is it was just impossible for him to find a rhythm. It wasn't that he's doing so many things wrong, is he just couldn't find a rhythm. You're playing for 5 minutes and then you're sitting for 45 minutes of real time. You're getting older. You're coming off an injury, so you get tighter. It's necessary that you get up and down a little bit to get loose. And then you come out and you sit that long. Now you're starting that process all the way over again each time that you do that. And I think we all just realized and was like, well, that's not the route that any of us want to go, because ultimately as a basketball player, the one thing you're looking for on the court is rhythm. And if you can't find that due to your rotation, then what does it matter? And so whereas Klay's, I think, was less ego and just more of us not knowing and figuring it out, I think now at this point, if you're doing that, it is ego, because we know we saw what that looks like and we never need to see it again. Like now, if Steph Curry come out and say I'm starting again, who's batting an eye? Nobody. But I think it was very mature of him to do that. I think it was the leader that we know he is to do that. And look what it did for Jordan. All works out in the end.
Off that, what do you think are some of the other pros of having Steph off the bench?
God, that's the greatest player ever to come off the bench. That's a pro. I think Steph Curry's going to have the ball. Steph Curry's going to find a rhythm. Other guys get in the rhythm, get in the flow of the game. now he comes in for a defense to go from, man, we're doing this, this, and this to, oh, shit. Oh, man, Mike, I'm sorry. Steph Curry's on the floor. Like, that's very tough to deal with. Now, I don't know how long that'll last. If it's a game, another game or 2 or 3, who knows? But if he stays that way through the rest of this playoff run and next year, I guarantee you I go to Caesars and I place my bet for 6th man of the year. Because I can't even bet, but that's a sure thing. That's for sure.
Hey, Draymond, talking about your podcast. As a kid, along with your basketball dreams, did you ever think, hey, I could be a TV guy. I could be a star in the media?
No, because basketball was it for me. Like I wanted to make it in basketball, and that was all I ever wanted to do. As you go through this, you do the interviews, you do all of these different things. The one thing I would always hear is like, man, you're a great interview. You're a great interview. You're a great interview. What does that mean, though? I never truly understood what that meant until I started interviewing people. But in my mind, what I thought it meant was like, oh, man, I can do this TV thing because people think I'm a great interview. I went on the arena and screwed up quickly and realized that wasn't quite what it meant. And, I had the question with Masai that just went all the way left. But that was such a huge moment in my learning and how to do this that I'm not sure I am where I am in my journey on that side without that moment, because it just taught me so much and failing in that moment. Like, I could have got mad at everybody else, like, y'all stupid. And like, this is what I meant. But the reality is the way I said it was terrible. And I know what I meant, and I think what I meant was great, but I didn't get it out that way. And so that taught me so much. And so, as I've gone on in my career, I've thought like, man, that's probably a second career for me, and I can really do that well. But that was just under the misconception of being a great interview would make me good at this. And once I realized that was the total opposite, and once you're sitting in the seat of actually you're hosting the interview, you're conducting the interview, it's totally different seat from me sitting here, and how to turn that on, how to turn that off, and just figuring all of those things out. I realized how far off I am, and being great at that. But I have a drive and a will to be great at it. I think I'm going to be great at it. But I work just as hard at that as I do at basketball now. And I mean, that's the only method I know that can help me get to where I want to go. And so I work extremely hard, and I dedicate a lot of time to it because I want to be great at it. And I think I can. I believe I can, or else I wouldn't do it. But if I'm being honest, it's way tougher than I thought it was.
Well, like in the podcast with Steph, you seem to put in some work, research. You weren't just winging it. You had questions and thoughts prepared.
Well, that was one thing that I figured out early on. It's like, I'm the type of person where if I need to go give a speech, the last thing I want is like a speech on a piece of paper, because I'm a butcher it. Like it just won't feel natural and normal to me. And I feel like I'm better when I'm just kind of, just being me and going with the flow, and one thing leads to another. And so my first few podcasts, I'll go back and watch like film on it. And I feel like if you go watch it, I'm all over the place. But I had like the notes that my producer would send me, and like I'm clicking on the Zoom link to start the podcast, and like I'm looking at the notes as I'm clicking on. And after the first few episodes, I started looking over my notes and like doing more research on my own. My producer, Jackson, he would send me these notes, and he would send me accomplishments, and he'd send me questions. And then I'm looking at the questions for the first time, and I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't quite ask this question in this way. So now I'm sitting there doing the podcast, and I'm trying to rephrase the question in the middle of listening to this guy speak and like doing all these things. And I realized like, yo, you got to do a little more preparing than what you're doing. And so I figured that out and I learned that. And now I, if I'm doing an interview on Monday, Wednesday before I'm starting to study my notes and going through things. But I've kind of realized like it's a process just like anything else. It's giving me so much more respect for everything that you all go through. Because it's the same preparation. Like you have to prepare yourself or you go in looking like an idiot. I felt like my first few podcasts, everybody was like, oh man, there's an NBA player that, speaks well. He's doing a podcast. That's great. But I think they were awful. And I think as I've gone along and, studied more and educated myself more and taken more notes, like, we do calls every now and then to figure out what's working, what's not. And I feel like as I've indulged more, I've gotten better, but I think I have so much further to go. Like, I listen to some of y'all podcasts and I think I'm so far off on just where I want to go. But it's a process, and I'm a rookie in the process, and I respect how I felt as a rookie before. And so I try to take my experiences and what I've done my whole life and try to apply them to this. And I understand that I'm a rookie and I have a lot to get better at, but I think if I continue to put the work in like I've been doing, I think I will get better.
So what do you see long term as your goal in the media, TV, podcast, whatever it might be?
Long term, I want to be bigger in media than I ever was at basketball. Long term, I want to win all the awards that you can win. I want to create some stuff and win some Emmys. I want to, I want to do all of those things that, comes on that side. And that's my goal. I would love to build a media empire, but I'm a rookie and I'm a long ways away from that. But ultimately, that's my goal. I want to be bigger in media than I am at basketball. And I think if I do that, I did pretty good.
This is like a weird segue back to basketball, I guess, after talking about your career goals. But Jokic yesterday after the game really gave props to you and Looney on just the way that you made his life so difficult. And at times he did look frustrated. How much do you feed off of that? Like knowing that who you're guarding, you're starting to get under their skin.
I think most people would be like, oh, man, that's great. I feel like he's going to try to come out and give me 40, 15, and 15 next game. So how I feel about that is that he's pissed off and he's coming back with a vengeance tomorrow. And Loon, myself, and Otto, Andre, Belly, all guys who saw time on him at some point or another. We just have to try to make things tough. When you're playing against a great player, they're going to score. He still had 25 points. You're not locking down a great player. He's the MVP of the NBA for a reason. And, he's possibly the MVP of the NBA again. We don't know yet, but for a reason. He's an incredible, incredible player. Very, very, very tough guard. When I'm guarding him, I'm also playing chess. It's not just all bang, 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 and beat him to the spot. Like it's a lot of different games within the game that you have to try to play against a guy like that. That's that smart. See, you have a lot of guys that's skilled and talented and not very smart. Don't see the floor well, kind of got like these blinders on and they see this one thing, which is the rim through these little blinders. And those guys are a lot easier to take out of the game than a guy like Joker who scores the ball just as well, if not better, as those guys that's like this, but pass the ball just as well as Chris Paul, reads the game just as well, as LeBron James. Take that with a grain of salt. LeBron James probably read the game better than anyone in the history of basketball, but you get my drift. Like, against a guy like that, it can't just be like, oh, I'm trying to do this one thing. There's so many other things that you have to do, because if not, he just quickly figures stuff out and take advantage of it. So thanks. but no thanks. I can't fall for that one. I know how he's coming out tomorrow. Just gotta try to make him take tough shots and live with the results.
So do you feel like you have to like bring up the intensity, like all of the guys that you mentioned, Belly, Otto, Looney, and you?
Yeah, as series goes on, you have to do that anyway. The games get tougher. First game, everybody's kind of feeling their way through. If you can get the win, great. But everybody's, just trying to figure it out. But the intensity, it rises. And so everybody got to ramp it up, not just against Joker, against everyone.
When did you notice Jordan was starting to understand some of the Steph stuff that you do with him, the DHOs?
Probably since I got back from injury. I remember early in the year, I was telling him, like, hey, man, I can make the game way easier for you. Slow down a little bit. Hey, man, slow down. And then not playing with him for 3 months and then coming back and seeing like, oh, man, he's slowed down and he's like comfortable in everything that he's doing. Then I realized, like, okay, now we can add some of that stuff in because he's set it himself. He's not just out there, boom, 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 and running this way and running that way. And like I'm coming into a screen and about to get a legal screen because he's already taken off. Like, or I'm going into a DHO and he done back cut just because he's bat out of hell at every second. He's found that stop, start. Oh, you guard me this way, I can use this. And so I feel like it's just really happened over the last month. And me returning from injury, us probably was a blessing that Steph was out, because if Steph's not out, then I just go back to doing those things with Steph. The fact that Steph was out, I'm like, all right, here are some of the things we can do. And you see how, and I would see how teams were guarding him. And I'm like, oh, this looks familiar. Like I've seen this before. And so we can kind of go through some of these things to help free him up. But at the same token, all the credit goes to him. He figured out pace and how to slow down and when to go fast and, when the beta guy, because I'm trying to get to this, he's figured those things out. So he's made it a lot easier to play with, play alongside him. And I think, we're starting to build a pretty good connection.